All right, great. Well, I hope everybody had a good week. I was away for several days this week at some meetings. I'm going to be away next week at some other meetings, but sounds like everything is going well. So originally we were planning way back when on killing the survey last Friday, but I extended it a few days so that we could cross the 1,000-person response, which we did. But because I sent it to some people and it said, hey, can you guys take it? It's still actually technically open. I'm going to kill it tonight because some people asked to sort of like, oh, when is it done? I'm like, well, it already was supposed to be, but I guess I won't turn it off yet. So tonight we will kill it. As of right now, we're up to 1,088. So hopefully, another couple hours, maybe we'll get 1,100 responses. So pretty cool. And I had that Google document up, and so before we look at the results, I want to just talk real briefly. And so these are now you guys can. So I'm going to give everybody this summary document probably tonight once I kill it, so you guys have the most updated stuff. And so, but as we'll look at in a second, we can also you guys can manipulate the data if you want and all this and that. Although knowing how things go at the end of the semester, you guys have other things to do. I don't think many of you will do a huge amount of that. So it's probably going to be easier for you guys to just ask me, hey, can you compare this and this, and then spit out the results, and I'm happy to do that for you, this weekend or early next week or whatever. But these are the only things that. So I shared this Google document with you guys, asking, were there special things beyond just the gross summary data that you guys would like to explore? And so this is what we have. So we have one. Tara wanted to ask about where people live. So can we break the results down based on that? So were you thinking of urban, suburban, rural? Is that what you're thinking of, or geographic? Okay. Okay, cool. So I think Dr. Patch can render a map for us, a pretty map, just of like where the respondents replied from. But well, just where they replied from. Maybe something really quick like, have they ever flown a drone or something? But before the end of the semester, with all the busy stuff, doing more than that in GIS is probably going to be hard. So simple, quick, like where are they from, that's not that much. But doing, which would be great if anybody wants to delve into this.
Tara's in GIS.
So if you want to do that, you are more than welcome. I can make the data file a little bit more friendly in terms of Latin lawn, in terms of the states. So we have a couple different things, right? We have a country where people replied from, and almost everybody's U.S. And then we have, they self-identify their state where they reside, Gesundheit. And then they, some of them, we ask them what zip code do they live in. And so not everybody always responds all those things, right? So what we really need to do is I really need about a week to QA, QC the data and say, when someone said that their home zip code is in California, did they also say California, right? Is where they live, and if they didn't, we could probably add that in, and that's probably okay, because they weren't necessarily required to answer most of these questions. They could skip them if they felt they didn't want to respond, but in that case we would know. But the problem would come to be if they said they reside in Arkansas and their zip code was a California zip code, right? So that's probably a handful of people, but still, to make the data really solid, we need to kind of do that sort of boring, crank through the data and make sure everything's consistent. Or if someone said something like, I don't know what an example would be, but if somebody said that, I don't think they could have done this on the online version, but maybe in some of the written versions, I don't know. But maybe they said, never flew a drone, and then how many times did you fly in the last 6 months? And they said, 10. Like that kind of like just making sure the data is internally consistent, so that we're not doing any weirdness with them. But simply breaking it down based on rural, urban, suburban, that's relatively easy. I can do that. And then next is Patrick. So number 14 and 15. Which were 14 and 15?
Those were just like the big like columns where it was.
Like what's a proper use kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you wanted that in terms of. Okay, so that one I already have. I think that one's already done. So basically what Patrick was wanting to see, so we have two ways of seeing if people are quote-unquote drone people, right? One is, have you ever purchased a drone for yourself or somebody else? That's one. And then the other question was, have you operated a drone once or a few times, ever? Have you operated it many times? Have you never operated it? And so what I did was I said people that never purchased a drone or did, and then people that, and then those other categories. So I haven't merged those two. I'm not sure how I merged those two easily. To say if you said no for both of those, that would be a definite no. So I'm sure there might be a little bit of discontinuity with the data, but the way I have it is at least a good, pretty solid approximation of that. So we can, and so that's for all the questions are broken down that way. So we could look at that. And then Casey wants to do how people felt about managing the coast versus climate change. But were you thinking about that in terms of their response to other questions?
Kind of just like a yes, no. Like people thought that if we were managing our coastal resources
adequately,
agreed to it, like if they also agreed to climate change being a problem.
But you're interested in the sort of environmental side of it, not so much the drone response. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can do that, although our fall polling is a much better test of that, and because what we found is because again these are a couple of the questions we included to look at what the population that we were sampling felt, just to see how that compared, because we have a pretty good bead on, for example, our California people's attitudes was tracked pretty it's a few percentage points different, but the up-down nature of it tracks pretty consistently with the U.S.-wide polling data about those, like climate change and stuff, people's attitudes towards it. So those were more of a check for us, and many folks responded to the climate change question. Very few people responded to the California question. I think they just skipped it because they weren't sure. So I think we got somewhere on the order of like 100 or something people responded about is California adequately managed, or maybe it's 200 or something. It was a small number. So that might not be the most robust test. So I think our other data sets are probably a better test of that, is what I'm saying. Was there something else? Yeah.
I was interested to see if education or location had any correlation with privacy.
Okay, wait. So it was level educational attainment, versus responses, and income, household income.
Or location.
What do you mean by location?
Like where they live.
But do you mean zip code, or do you mean the one where they identify urban, suburban?
No, zip code.
Okay, household income versus responses, and then one would be zip code. So zip code. So that would. So I don't know if we can do that right now. And we could do that, but in terms of getting that ready for you guys next week, that. Yeah, because we have to sort of go and then bin it by zip code. So this zip code is Orange County, which is California, which is what. Do you know what I'm saying? So.
Like if by zip code it would mean maybe that's too broad or too narrow of a micro.
I mean, no. It's definitely a fun thing to explore, but just realize this is a thousand.
Urban, suburban, and whatever the other categories. Those, when people actually answer those categories, they were not actually appropriate.
Some people were like confused about it.
Because even when the categories of the 100,000, Oxnard itself was not, what is it? It's
urban.
Urban. It's not urban, or I mean, it's not it should have been. Everyone should have marked it as urban.
Right.
Yeah,
And
some people voted as rural or something. I had two people like
Yeah,
argue
I
with
have
it.
all three.
Right.
Everybody marked
Right.
it as all three categories.
Right.
Because it was very unclear.
So that's one of those ones that's the go back and double check.
That's why I don't want to use the urban, suburban, and rural because I don't think it's accurate. But I think that definitely the privacy can be. I think that it's very important to see if your education level, how you might view privacy.
Sure. No, I'm with you. So I'm saying these are all good things to look at. I'm just saying the zip code one will take some more time.
Okay.
And that's a bit much to put on you guys, what I'm saying. Right. So we should definitely look at it, but the issue with the zip code is, what the heck does that mean, right? Because we have people from all, like, hundreds and hundreds of different zip codes.
I think it would need to be grouped in certain areas.
Right. So that's what I'm getting at. So do you want like coastal? Do you want it, coastal state? Do you want it coastal county? Do you want it high income county? There's all kinds of ways to do that, but I think that takes a little more thought.
Okay.
So it might be easier to just look at the urban whatever as just a first pass. Look at the state, maybe state-wise, how do people respond? We did pretty great for our little class activity here. This was cool. This was a really good job. But we do have some states where there's a handful of respondents. A lot of states with a handful of respondents, right? So whereas like California we have hundreds, others we have dozens and dozens, but others we have a one or two or three people kind of thing. Yeah. So I'm going to delete zip code just because, for time wise. But is there something else? Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about number 16 is people are considered that they may pose a threat to personal privacy.
Personal privacy, okay.
And then I wanted to kind of compare that to how many people actually knew privacy laws.
Right.
But then I also was curious to go back to number 16. Forget about that.
With verse who knew about privacy laws.
And then I wanted to see people if they were concerned about privacy, and then see what they said about using drones for emergency medical.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, yeah. So then you want the privacy. So you guys want privacy versus other responses.
And then privacy versus using it for social services.
It's overwhelming. Like when I was putting these results, it's overwhelmingly dominant that people are concerned about privacy. I mean, everything that I was putting in, it was privacy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that it's,
But then people are like, oh, it's going to help fight a fire or find a lost hiker. Maybe I'm down for that. So I wanted to kind of explore
And then
that.
it was funny, like when you were first telling us, people definitely differentiate between federal and county or whatever.
Yeah, right. Federal government and local government using it.
That was weird to me. I was like, what difference does it make if it's the federal government or the local government? I'm like, okay.
Some people don't see a distinction between different levels of government. They see government. Other people see a very clear distinction between actions the government might take.
And that's education. Because I mean, if you're lower education, people wouldn't probably consider.
Yeah, be careful with that. Maybe. That's a hypothesis we can test.
Right.
So maybe.
That's why I want to run the education level.
Or maybe people that do a lot of interaction with one government level are like, lawyers or I don't know who, but maybe someone says, oh man, this level of government is responsive.
Right.
This one is not. So I am more comfortable with this one using it because it seems like if something goes awry, I can push a button and they would respond. Whereas this one, it seems like if they just use it, they're just going to use it. So I'm just saying. So hypotheses to test. Right.
There's
Okay,
a lot
cool.
of data in here.
Yeah, there's tons of data here. Something else. Is there anything else big that you guys are wanting to maybe do something other than just the gross summary statistics? Yeah.
Can we possibly do like occupation?
Ooh, occupation to be a great one, but that's another one we have to bin because people just said we made it open, and so I started to try to do that the other week, and I was like, oh my god, this is going to take days and days. Yeah, because we have to figure out what the appropriate, like some people just say sales, right? Other people say, business.
Store manager.
And some say manager. And so I mean, there are clear categories from like the census that we could use, but there might be some other categories that we might want to add in. So probably what we need is several different occupation columns, right? One is maybe just like the generic, or like say the census version, but another might be drone-related work or industry, non-drone related work or industry, like that kind of stuff, or something like natural resource management, like a farmer or a forester or something like that, versus someone that's working in like an office. There's different ways to slice that. So it's a great one. But I think what I would like to do is have you guys look at that and then propose some categories, because it really is. It's 1,000 different. It's not 1,000. Not everybody answered that, but it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different responses. Some of which are one word, some of which are like 5 or 6 words. So that's one that's definitely going to need a week or two of just going through, doing a first pass, and say I think this is that, and then having someone else go through and confirm that I think that's that category. So totally doable, but maybe not by the end of the semester, kind of thing. But good thought. I like that thought. But privacy versus uses. And something else? Any other bins that you guys?
I liked question 30.
Which is which one?
When I think about UIV, I feel.
Oh, what do they feel?
Yeah, and I think you could do like a cool graph, like a star graph based on all of these different things.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and so that you guys will have that raw data. So that one you can totally do. But and totally should. But I was just wondering did you want to bin that with anything else? Did you want to say? Oh, privacy. Okay, so privacy.
So a lot of people feel concerned about privacy.
Versus how do you feel about drones? So, for example, some of those feeling words are like more positive and yes, and others are more negative, and so maybe sort of like the negative connotations versus the positive ones, and if that tracks with their worry about privacy.
Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Tim.
Privacy versus if people felt better with the geofencing.
Okay.
Privacy laws.
Versus geofencing improves situation. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so that's cool. So most of those I should be able to get together. So why don't we take, again, with the caveat that we might, hopefully we'll get another 12 or so responses by this evening when I kill it. But let's just take a look and see what we're looking like right now. Okay, so I should say the way this report is going to come out, I could also provide you guys the raw data if you want to like suck it into SPSS or do something fancy. But I think for most of you guys, just the summary data is going to be good for you. But realize that in this report, the way I have this report, at least as it's currently represented, if people said, I don't know, it just leaves that off. And there's an argument to say leave it off. There's also an argument to say include that data. But just realize that the totals will vary. Because some questions everybody was forced to respond to. But most of the questions people were not forced to respond. So just, realize that. So if you're doing percentages in a question like this, you would take this number divided by the total, right? So what's going on here is probably 1,030 odd number of people respond to this question. More than that, actually. There's probably a few people that said, I don't know. There's probably another like 50 people or so that said, I don't know. Here, what's going on is there's hundreds of folks said, I don't know, right? And so maybe that's a useful piece of data that people don't even feel confident enough to say anything. But just realize, what the heck is that? Earth Day, I guess. So just that's my only caveat is when you're looking through this, you always want to realize that the numbers will vary on question and this and that, and that's to be expected. So again, here's our predator, and so curious to how you guys think we should analyze this. A couple different options, Gesundheit. A couple different options. One is just simply what's the most popular answer, right? You can throw this into a chi-square and say if 1,031 people responded to this, and we thought they were equally probable, we divide that total by a third, say, and say we'd expect, 333 people to vote for this, 330 people to vote for that. So clearly this is going to be statistically significantly different. So you can do that type of approach. You could do the type of approach of how common are drones? How common is the word drone? Is it always the most popular answer? Is it the second most popular answer or whatever? But looking at this, most people, it seems pretty significantly, seem to call a predator a drone. All right, so the military technology a drone. UAV, a lot of people, Now recall for this question, you could only pick one thing. So if you picked drone, you couldn't pick UAV. If you picked other, you couldn't pick the other two. So no, not on the online version. No, no. So they might have on the face-to-face one. Maybe they ticked more than one, but on this one, they had to, yeah. If you click drone, you click drone. If you click the UAV, it would delete the drone one and make the UAV one go on. So yeah, so basically drone is the popular term there. Have a look at the weird hummingbird thing. Can you guys see this? Should I make this bigger for you? Let's see, maybe I can make this bigger for you. Is that better? Sorry. Okay, let's try it like this. Okay, so the weird hummingbird thing, nobody really knows, right? Most common answer is other, but it's really variable, right? So again, the way you guys could choose to analyze this question, if you're going to do that, is you could just say that the straight up percentages of these things, or you can say the relative dominance, right? So so drone is super dominant here. This is a much more even. So you can just talk about the response to question 2, or you could talk about the response to question 2 in relation to question 1 and 3 and 4. And all those give you insights, and there isn't one that's right and one that's wrong. It's just different ways of thinking about the data, and you guys are free to interpret it as you think makes the most sense. Then with the Phantom here, heavily drone, even more so than the Predator, a drone, right? And very few people call this something other than a UAV or a drone. If they call it something, it's one of these two terms. The little micro insect robot thing, very similar to the hummingbird in that it's pretty evenly split. Nowhere near as clear a pattern as with the other devices. With the fixed wing here, interestingly, pretty similar, but it looks like UAV is a more popular term than, say, drone. So this seems to be, people would call that a UAV. And then with something like a blade, a smaller quadcopter, we go back to the word drone. So this is interesting. Again, this question was introduced last year when there's this real, at least in some circles, there was this real debate, like, don't call that drone, right? On campus, our campus policy, we weren't allowed to use the word drone. We had to use the word unmanned aerial system, or small unmanned aerial system, or unmanned aerial vehicle. They were very clear. They didn't want to see. I think one like initial descriptor paragraph, we said what people sometimes call drone or something. But then for the whole rest of the policy, it was don't use drone, and it was very much like don't use that word because that people think of that as blowing stuff up. And so last year when we had our first class and we first took the first stab at this poll, that was a thing. I would say what appears to be coming out of this is that is not necessarily the case anymore, right? And if you look through the comments, which I hope you guys will when I give you the full thing, there's a lot of comments from certain circles like, oh, I don't know, RC community folks, very adamant, this is like the wrong word, and, UAV, nobody uses that, and, So some people have very clear opinions, but it seems as if that fraction of the community is more going away, and these general terms seem to be sort of morphing to cover this technology. So I predict that going forward another 2-3 years, this drone is going to become the word for most of these things, I think.
I'm a little confused. What is like the correct answer?
What is the? Oh, there is no correct answer. Yeah, there is no correct answer. So this is just what does the public think of that this word means. So that was the whole issue, is that we get in these debates with people, and some people were very adamant it's A, and other people very adamant it's B, and as a class, you guys trying to be professionals with us, what's the right term? So this is the answer. I would say this is the answer for right now, which will continue to evolve. So again, initially there was a lot of opinions about exactly what term you should use, and the hang-ups about those terms seem to be going away. They haven't left. There's clear preferences, but they seem to be changing. Cool? All right. Yeah.
Okay. Also, another interesting thing to look at is because there's less response.
That's right. That's right.
Like, maybe there's a little bit.
That's right. Yeah. So as Tara was saying, totally. Yeah. So the absolute gross number of respondents that said drone, UAV, or other, that also tells us some insight, and you'll see that later on with some of our other questions too. That there is data in that, just like there's data in the actual who says A or B. So totally, I completely agree. So that's let's see, question 1. All right. So this one is now. This is there's percentages. So now realize that we're going to get we have really different data, really different numbers from our in-person survey, right? That's partly because when our survey went out, in some circles it went to the drone community and they circulated to other people in the drone community, right? So that's why the next thing I'll show after we finish with this, I'm going to show you the breakdown of drone people versus non-drone people. And so it's important to remember to realize that. But at least just starting off, right? This is people that never purchased a drone, and so 60 in our online survey, which if anything is heavily biasing, or not heavily, but at least biasing towards drone enthusiasts, are probably overrepresented in the population than just a random sample of the American population. 60% still have never purchased or received a drone. So that's so right. And then if we in a little bit when we look at our in-person thing, that's a much lower number. But then this seems interesting. So given that, a lot of people have purchased these units more than just this last Christmas, right? So Christmas is obviously a big electronics selling time of the year, and this and that, and that's cool. But a lot of these people have had it for more than just that period. Almost everybody that does, and then again, so these questions now, these have been selected. So this option only comes up when people say that they've purchased one, right? So you notice the total response is a lot less than 1,000, right? It was closer to 400 people had a response here. And so a few people, about a fifth, said, I bought this for my company, bought this for my school, bought this for my whatever group, which is much higher than I thought, right? So that's a large amount. Most people are using it for their own purposes. And then again, we've oversampled the drone users, but having said that, we have about a little bit less than a third of our respondents say that they've of the folks, again, this is a subsample, right? Of the folks that have responded, they said this is a third of the folks have flown a lot. So this is one of the key breakdowns that we were looking at, right? So about 500 people said no, and then if we add both these guys up, right, it's about a little bit less than 500 or so said that they have flown it, flown one. And then here's a big result. Everybody's multi-rotor, right? Multi-rotor is basically the story. So that probably has implications for people's thinking about privacy, right? Fixed wing can operate much farther, get a much bigger view. Multi-rotor, much more precise. So it could maybe stare in your bathroom window or something, right? Whereas the fixed wing would be more of a concern if someone was characterizing your neighborhood or something like that, right? So clearly that's what's going on. Not many people are using vertical takeoff and landing type funky things. Very few people are doing other. And not that many people are messing with a helicopter style unit. Again, almost everybody is buying cheap stuff, which is interesting because we'll see when we look at the breakdown, most of our drone users are older on it. They skew older, they skew wealthier, but even with that, even with all that, the cheapest price point is what people are buying. Almost everybody's getting this online, right? The vast majority of folks are getting this online. And if we added an online vendor to a manufacturer's online website, right, we're that's almost 2/3 of the folks. That's what they're doing. One of those options. Then we have about 1/3 of the folks are going to their local hobby store or electronics store, in person. And then surprisingly enough, almost 10% are buying it from other people, which we didn't have that last year. And that was a suggestion of one of our initial reviewers. Jonathan suggested, hey, I bought mine from somebody else. You should add that as a category. So that was of note. Okay, the camera. So this might be one that also you might want to look at in terms of your guys' things that correlate with the privacy issue. So almost everybody got one with the package. So almost everybody's getting a multi-rotor. The most common option is to have a unit that comes with the camera integrated, or they didn't come with it integrated, but they ordered that option, so that we go north of 50. More than half the people have that, and yeah. And then there's another 11% that didn't do it, but maybe want to do it in the future. So clearly, image capturing is a key aspect of this technology, and we can't break those two things apart. Vast majority of the use was for personal recreation, so people having fun, flying around, just taking pictures of their dog or whatever. The next most common one is, as you would expect, since the primacy of this aerial image capturing technology, is people doing aerial photography. So probably wedding photographers, maybe real estate imaging for sales brochures, stuff like that. And then the other categories are much smaller. What was this one? California is adequately managing our resources. Again, that's a total of 134, right? That's 10% of our overall respondents responded. So that's why, Casey, I said this might not be a good question to use. It's a pretty small subset of folks. This one, though, is much more robust. So this we got, almost 850, more than 850 responses. So this suggests that overall our online population, 88% of the people, and this doesn't get into the whole political thing of what should we do or who caused it. This just simply says climate change is a significant thing we should deal with. Right? That's all it says. And this is a bit more than we typically get when we do our random public encounters. We typically get more like 79 to 84% is the typical range we see, which is a little teeny bit higher than the national average, but not massively higher. So this suggests that we're getting people that have a greater propensity to believe that climate change is real than the average American population. So people that actually believe in things like facts, I guess we were talking to. But I shouldn't throw my opinions out there, I guess. Let's see if we can stretch this out. Okay, so now this one, the stuff with the mean, ignore. So this has gone in, and this has given scores to these things. I think like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something, and then it's calculated the average. That doesn't make sense. Well, it kind of makes sense, but it's a little bit problematic. So I would ignore this. This is supposed to mean little bit, more, really more, huge amount, massive is the idea. What that mean is supposed to tell us where we fall in the spectrum, and it's still useful, but there's some caveats you have to make. So probably just cleaner just to look at the raw things. Now, we have this and similar questions as very appropriate, or sometimes we use a different term, but totally yes, neutral, I'm kind of split on the fence, no, or very no, basically. And then we also have an I don't know category that's not here, which again is why these numbers, some of them are 889, whereas some are 913. An easy thing to do that might help is just say, you can merge these columns, right? Which might make it simpler for you to do the first pass, which is saying people that said it's appropriate or very appropriate, right? So in this case, we'd add 719 to 172 to hardly anybody said inappropriate. And so this is performing dangerous safety inspections. So, everybody thinks it's an appropriate use to use this technology for dangerous things. Yeah.
So for your meme, it's going very appropriate is 1, and then appropriate is 2, like that?
I believe so. I have to double check. But I believe it was said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The problem is I think it probably scored I don't know as 6.
Okay.
So it's I don't know is not really on that spec. It's not. It should be like not factored in. So, but as a quick and dirty guide, yes, 1 is going to be or lower number is going to be closer to this side of the spectrum. Higher number is going to be closer to this side of the spectrum. But again, better to maybe not use that 1. Okay, then terrain mapping also. People are like, totally go map the hillside. Monitoring wildlife, yup, go monitor wildlife. People like that. Spraying pesticides, a little bit, not so. I mean, definitely still, if we add these guys together, right? If we add the appropriate, inappropriate, appropriate, very appropriate, and then the inappropriate, very inappropriate, this is going to win out. But again, so this is your guys' choice how you want to interpret this. You could just pick one of these things and talk about it, or you could talk about them relative to the other things. And certainly, relative to the other things, this guy stands out, right? That there's a lot less support for using this technology. Even though still in aggregate it might be a positive thing, it's more evenly split. Sort of similar with taking aerial photographs of wildlife, right? There's more people in the neutral, and it's the yes, go ahead, do it still wins out, but it's not as clear a decision. Delivering small packages, no effing way, right? I mean, people are really not very happy with that, right? So there's a lot. So in this case, the inappropriate, people think that this technology is inappropriate for that. And we talked about this last time or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, about, well, yeah, maybe people need to see an example of it, or they don't know in their head what that really means. But the fact remains, there's a lot of trepidation about this aspect, much more so than these other uses of the technology. Non-commercial recreational use, generally, yeah, go ahead and do it. Personal use on your own property. We were just talking earlier about Mountains Restoration Trust and their personal property. People seem to think, yep, if it's confined on your property, go ahead. Measuring changes to dynamic coastal systems. I don't know why we asked that question, but somebody might be interested in doing that. And again, look at that. Boom, everybody's, yeah, totally. Hardly anybody says that's a bad use of this technology. Mapping potential hazards, same thing, yep. Counting the number of visitors on the beach. Again, I don't know why we want to ask that question, but much more evenly split, right? Still the positive, people say, yeah, go ahead and do it. But more, people start to say, oh, you're counting me? We talk counting wildlife, yeah, cool. Counting me, like, yeah, wait, what is he doing again?
It's just like when you're in the student union or in the building and we have to do accounts, people get very offended when they're counting.
Really?
Yeah, I have friends where I'm sitting in the lunchroom and they're like, I'm not a number. And I'm like,
right.
So it's funny, people don't like to be considered as a number, and so I think that's what this comes down to.
Right. Well, this is like, so one thing I've wanted to do for a while with the ESRM 205, which is our Introduction to Sustainability, is do an audit of how well some of our water stuff is going on campus. And so one of the great things I really want to test, I still think it's a great project, but there's issues. But we have many female students here, so maybe you don't all know this, but in the men's room we have waterless urinals. And on those urinals is a sign that says, this water-free device saves, whatever it says, 40,000 gallons of water a year on average. And then it's like, wait, on average? Is that for us? Is that on average at a downtown Manhattan law firm? Is that at a rural farm? What is that? And so what I wanted to do is it sounds very creepy, but like sort of be in the bathroom and how many times do you guys go pee a day, right? Because that's what we need to know. If you knew that, then we could say, okay, the old urinal uses X number of gallons, and if on average we use that facility this amount of times, and we had 4 units, you can calculate how much water we really saved. And it sounds silly, but that's actually really, really key data, because all these people are making decisions saying how much water we're saving with this device, and they could be totally right. I'm not saying they're not right, but it kind of seems like the kind of thing we might want to check just, once to show that we're at least in the ballpark of this amount of savings, or are we not in the ballpark of those savings? So, but yes, you're right. Going in and counting people found the little get arrested kind of thing, right? So don't know how to do that without creeping people out or being seen as some weird stalker or something.
You could kind of do that by just putting some type of sensor every time they flush, rather than.
There's no flushers is the thing.
Oh.
See?
Because weren't they doing that at Santa Rosa? Like they were keeping track of how much the gas is used, and then how many. So they're somebody took a shower at 1 a.m.
Right.
They were able to figure it out.
Yep.
The physics students.
You could do how many people do.
Right. So yeah, I don't want to segue us into a survey of toilet flushing, but I'm just saying, but it's that same idea, right? That in general people are cool, but then when they start being counted, they're, as Antonella was saying, it's a natural thing, right? And so we just need to be sensitive to that. Okay. Next is animal poaching. Yeah, I get the poachers, right? So people seem to like us to use it for that. Search and rescue, totally. I think search and rescue might be. Yeah, search and rescue is by far the most supported, very appropriate thing.
I have a question. Okay, I don't know if this is a stupid question, but could I isolate the data and find out? So if somebody says that they are super concerned about privacy, could I find all of those people's surveys and then find out what they said about that? I can do that?
Yep, totally. Yep. Yeah, so all these things we can cross-reference to another variable or response.
I'm going back to the counting visitors. Somebody made a really good comment back to me, and they said, "You don't think that amusement parks are already counting you with every time you go through the turnstile?"
Right, and every time, that's exactly, they're doing count, and then when they walk, when you go into each little thing, they've got the clickers, and just going, they want to see how busy each entertainment thing is. I mean, it's
Where?
like at Disneyland. When you go,
Oh, at Disneyland, totally. Disneyland, totally.
Everywhere you go.
Oh, I agree.
See if the
Everywhere you go, except for our open spaces,
Right,
they have no clue.
because they're not making money, so they can't staff it to count you.
Yeah, I would say it's more leadership, quite honestly. Having talked with many people, they're desperate for this information. They love that when we do a student project that counts how many visitors go to blah 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 park. They love it because they really want to know that, but they don't do it. One, they don't have the resources, but I think another more important thing is because of these privacy things you guys are talking about. People hear about Disneyland counting me, and that's okay, right? The government counting me? What? What are you talking about, right? Visa knows way more about you than the government knows. They know everything about you, right? And people seem to be okay with that. But yeah, so there are definitely issues when we get into articulating ourselves and all this and that. Okay. Which is probably another thing just we should acknowledge, right? Which is our surveys are anonymous. Do people believe that? Right? So some people probably started the survey, started clicking it, and they started out and they're like, what? I don't want to respond. Because even though this truly is anonymous, we're not tracking people. We don't know. They're self-identifying what state they come from. They're self-identifying, if they want to, their zip code, right? So we're not somehow automatedly collecting that. But some people still probably think online survey, no, right? Man, you're going to, get my password or something.
If somebody started the survey online and then quit halfway through, do we still have half of their survey?
Yeah, so the question is, if someone started and they didn't click the very last question, or because they can click through without answering, but they didn't click to the last screen. That's considered a partial survey, and so the data, I believe, are in here now. I have to double check, but when we kill it, that data gets incorporated. So I mean, it might only be like maybe they went halfway through, as opposed to getting to the very end. And so there's a variable that I think we can pull that out. But yeah, it will record even partial responses.
One of my surveys that I thought the person took 45 minutes to do the entire response. All the respondents or responses were I don't know. Seriously? Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I went through and I was like, you took 45 minutes to put I don't know.
Different people have different things. Okay, so then again back here, filming TV or movie shows. Still, generally people think, yeah, that's okay. Covering breaking news. This was surprising to me. So still, in aggregate, yes, use it for breaking news, but it's much less strongly supported than these other things. If you have a look at it, right? We have mapping hazards. 660 and whatever 800. So like 900 people say yes. Covering breaking news? It's like 460. So it's like half that amount. And I would have thought, in my biased view, that this what's the value of this? Oh my gosh, if there's a wildfire, we can go over and fly and see if it's coming towards the neighborhood or not, right? Without it, because we can't have a lot of times in those situations, the news helicopters have to be kept away so that firefighting aircraft can do stuff, or whatever you can imagine, whatever the scenario is, right? An earthquake. Oh my God, let's go see what the impact of the earthquake was. That seems to me a great use of this technology, but people don't see it that way. Clearly, they see that as more. I don't know, but I think it's likely that this is saying that people are thinking this more in the salacious aspect of news gathering. So TMZ and celebrity following and like that more invasion type of journalism as opposed to informing type of journalism. I think that's
Yeah, the negative connotation of breaking news.
In the future, can we have a breakdown between like paparazzi and then like breaking news or more reputable?
Yeah. So that's another thing. So one of the things you also do at the end of your write-up is how should we fix it for next year? Like this question totally sucked. We don't need to ask that again. Or this was cool, but let's tweak the answer to be like that. To like say breaking news. I don't know about disasters or something, and breaking news about celebrities or something. So that's a good suggestion. Filming extreme sports, people seem to think it's good for. So it looks like extreme sports are. Well, yeah, I think now they're about as supported as breaking news, I guess. But delivering rapid emergency medical services, people seem to like that. Okay, so here's a great one. So this is the not real answer, right? And so the appropriate answer here was either to say, I don't know, because this doesn't exist. This is a made-up thing. So the answer is I don't know, or neutral is probably also an acceptable answer, because I don't know if that was that. So but people that said, especially people said definitely not. That's totally wrong, because there's no such thing. And so there's another response too that we made like that. And so it comes out to be pretty consistently about 5% for us. So that appears to be our error rate. So when you go to the other questions, and one response was 45% of the people thought this, the other response was 40% of the people respond, or let's say 45% of the people said this, and then 41% of the people said the other thing. We can't say that's different from each other, right? That's within our error, respondent error. So so that's how we use this one. And then helping to fight fires, again, people are really supportive of that. You concerned about personal privacy? So only about 10% of the people were not concerned at all. If we add the not concerned to not really concerned, that takes us up to about a quarter of the people. So that says that 3/4 of the people are at least moderately concerned about privacy. So again, privacy is a real thing, and it's not just something that we can play away or say is some weird paranoid person. Are you concerned that it poses a risk? Again, people that don't think it poses any risk at all, 4%. So almost, right? We have an error of 5%, so that's not significantly different from 0. Not very concerned at all. If we add both these guys together, we're getting about 20%. So about a fifth of the people say not worried about that. Everybody else are at least moderately concerned about issues with aircraft. So we get all ticked off about the FAA. We get like, these are stupid rules. Clearly, there are true concerns out there amongst our fellow citizens that, and folks elsewhere that this is an issue. So this is one about how often people go outside. So if there were some issues, if there's some issues with you guys said you were not sure if our breakdown of rural, urban, if people that was really robust. This is probably a more robust measure. Not that this tells us the same thing, but this maybe tells us a little more people that are engaged in outdoor spaces versus people that are more indoorsy type folks. Yeah, so again, this is the kind of thing where you could merge these categories. So if we could say people that go to natural areas at least weekly is going to be 30. It's going to be it's going to be almost 60% of people go to outdoor spaces at least weekly, right? So yeah. Okay, everybody thinks that we should have a course like you guys are having. Or probably not as in depth as this, but some kind of online training. Also of note, this is one of the answers that they could respond more than one to more than one category. So if we sum these up, this is going to be more than 100%, right? So a lot of people think that we should have a training, and and that could be, who knows, that could be as short as a couple hours or an online thing. But then, so everybody thinks we should have that. So people don't seem to want people just to buy one of these things and randomly go fly it without any kind of thought of safety. But then about half the people think there should be some type of approved permit. Doesn't say what they think there should be in the permit, but that more than just having watched a video or something like that. Happily, only 8% think that you should have an airplane license, right? Which is our main hang up with the FAA. So people don't seem to be too concerned. And then a few people think that we shouldn't have any restrictions at all. Again, total response, only about half of our response here. So a lot of people don't know. The majority of this would be people saying, I don't know. But a lot of people don't know what the FAA restrictions are. Of people that do it, most think, 2 to 1 people think inappropriate. Have you ever seen one flying near you outside of one that you're operating? And again, 2/3 of people have. In our population, this will change when we look at our face-to-face, but it's fairly common. This is the one. It's just you have to look at for comments. This is people. These things are kind of hard to interpret. Here's the question you guys were asking about: rural, urban, suburban, rural. Pretty close to the amount of folks that are urban versus suburban, and a subset of folks are in more rural, self-identify as being in more rural settings. So I don't have the U.S. breakdown on that. I should probably find that to see how this matches up to the U.S. overall. But this is sort of what I would think. Although there should be more people in urban areas than are in suburban. But I think the urban suburban versus rural is I think probably pretty good representation. Occupation, again, that's going to take forever. Year you were born. This is one that is going to be hard to interpret the way it comes out. So this is the histogram. So it looks like I think the average when I last ran it was something like 1970 or 69 is the average age of respondents. So a little bit older than I think the U.S. national average. Household income. So we definitely oversample wealthy people.
Yeah. Well, I know
right.
Definitely allowed. It was nothing like that.
Right.
One person.
Right. Educational attainment. People are much more likely to have gone to college than the average than the average person in the U.S. Gender is, we skew male, right? This should be about 50-50, and we're skewing male. Overregulation, you know, about 2 to 1 people think that overregulation will disadvantage us. So this is a weird thing about the way it's displaying questions, like the way I enter them in the database. So the questions came up correctly, but just the order that you're seeing them isn't necessarily in the order that they popped up in. And plane crash, yeah, that one I have to process the data for you because people put some different things in there. Okay, so here's Tim's question, or your guys' question. So if we had the ability to electronically fence off an area, would that alleviate some of your worries about, you know, people trespassing on your property? And surprisingly, not so much. It's pretty 50-50, right? That doesn't seem to affect people's worry about privacy. So there we
I
go.
don't think people believed in the idea.
What's that?
A couple people asked me, like, what is geofencing or electronically fencing? I was like, it's just a concept that could be implemented. I don't think people really thought it was a real thing.
So yeah, that might be one for next year. Maybe a little more, maybe a sentence or two descriptor before we ask that question, explaining what it is or something.
My big thing was, you know, the first page explain. Nobody read it. So then I had to go and explain what UAV was, which would have helped them to answer the pictures.
Right.
A lot of people were like, I guess they were like, how much would this cost? Is this practical?
The geofencing thing?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So maybe you know, in the future we say something like, if we had a practical, cost-effective geofencing solution that was simple, would that, you know, maybe something like that would maybe help alleviate some of those things. All right, what else? Do you know existing laws? Again, almost not quite 2 to 1 don't know what the laws are, and again, only about half of our respondents even said that. So the other people probably said, well, I don't even know this. I'm just gonna, you know, not either skip it, or they said, I don't know. Should people have the right to shoot down a UAV? Fairly split, although a majority say no. So yeah. If you're at the beach and notice a UAV, would you be worried or whatever? So again, if we add the not concerned at all to not really concerned, that's going to be about 45%. So slightly more than half the people would be at least moderately concerned. Now, to be sure, people that are very or extremely concerned are only about 20%, only about a fifth, but still. So that tells us that as we move out and as you guys start using these tools for resource management and data collection stuff, we do again need to be concerned that people, you know, truly, it's not just some weird freako that is afraid of these. It's a fairly common, at least moderate worry about what are they doing. And they say why, and then again, this one you have to look through, but basically it's all because I'm not sure what they're doing. I don't know what the purpose is. What if it was its purpose? Wasn't flying safe, or you know, whatever. Yeah, go ahead.
I thought it was just a really interesting answer. Let's all walk around all day with selfie sticks out front, drones following us, leading.
What?
Yeah. So yeah, you guys can read all those later. There's all kinds of interesting comments you guys can explore more deeply. So people, only one person had never heard about a drone before they took this poll. So
that was my person.
wait, no, this is online.
Oh.
This is online.
I asked one person, they were like, I've never heard of this.
But there you go. So it seems to be, you know, in the wake of 9/11, seems to be when people really heard about this stuff. Probably in the war on terror and all that stuff. Okay, here's the question you guys are talking about. So interested or intrigued is very popular. And so this would be one that we might want to bin these into, you know, excited and interested and intrigued and those things, and concerned and worried and that kind of stuff. But there's your breakdown. And this is just one to bin with our California answers. So have people This is one that you guys were supposed to check that yes when you did the face-to-face one because we're doing it in California, but this is for people, you know, to try to give us some sense of realism on that one question. We have about 10% of people say they're a pilot, a certified pilot. When I try to run the numbers, it's more like, it's hard to know, but it seems like about 3% of the U.S. population are pilots or have been certified as a pilot at one point. So that's a lot. That's way more than I thought. I thought it'd be like less than a part of 1%. But there's a lot of private pilots licenses that people have at least pursued. So in any event, we're way over sampling the pilots. But this would be another. It doesn't sound like anybody's interested. But this would be another one we could look at. The question about, do they pose a threat to aircraft? How do the pilots respond versus non-pilot people respond? Okay, so that's that. And then let's look at this cross-tabulation. Okay, so for example, this one, I'll share these with you guys, but this is what they'll look like. I didn't make every single question, but it's got to think for a second. So what it's going to do is we basically give it some rules, and then it spits out the correlations that you guys are interested in. So this will look confusing, but let's just start with this. So again, this is I've purchased or received a UAV as a gift, right? And so this is never, and then I merged the people that purchased it like this Christmas or previously, right? Similarly, I could merge these guys if you want, which is anybody ever flew a drone or didn't, right? I'm not sure how I combine the answers from these two different questions, but we can just do it. We can just add it. We can do it manually, like in an Excel spreadsheet or something. So okay, so this is this, right? So these are the categories that it's going to bin everything by, and then here's the question. So are you concerned that UAVs may pose a threat to personal privacy? So when you guys are doing your write-up, what I would suggest you do, if, for example, this is the question you want to look at, I would have a column that's just our aggregate response, right? Just so that everybody had, in the breakdown of this. And then have these other columns, which is if we break it down this way and this way. So let's have a look. So here we go. People that have never purchased a drone, let's look at it here. 100, and so now how we sum them varies, right? So in this case, these guys, the percent replied to is the distribution of folks that said they have purchased a drone versus the distribution of people that have never purchased a drone. Yeah? With me? So, oh shit, I should have plugged my computer in. So here we go. So these guys, people that have purchased a drone are not concerned, about 20% of them are not concerned at all about privacy, versus only 3% of folks that never have, right? So in other words, we see the effect of people that haven't used this technology or have more trepidation about this technology. And so, and again, similarly, are you worried about encounters with airplanes? Extremely concerned of the people that have purchased them, about 20%. People that never have purchased them, it's about 40%. Right? So clearly these things are probably important ways we should segregate the data. Drone familiar, I don't know how we want to say it, but drone familiar or drone comfortable people versus drone naive people maybe is a way to say it, right? So without prejudging people. And then yeah, so I'll post up for you guys. Yes, we can look through it all yourself. But so here's right. So here's an interesting one. So this is people that have purchased or used a drone, 82% male to 13% female, versus the people that haven't purchased a drone, much more closer to 50-50. So that tells us that our drone users are skewing way male, right? And so that's how we can mess with this data. Let's look at one more thing.
So are you going to integrate our in-person surveys with the online surveys?
You're gonna get both of them. You're gonna get both of them. So let's look at these. So I think there's a few that I have to delete here because a couple folks like made some errors. So it's probably like 20 or so I have to delete. So this is not correct yet. But let's take a quick look. So here we go. So we just looked at the last version, which was the online. Here is the face-to-face one. Again, no QA, QC. So again, drone is the most popular term, which tracks with what we were seeing before. Much more unclear what we call this. Again, drone with the Phantom, more unclear with this. A more even breakdown. Last time we saw people were pretty clear that we called this a UAV. It's not clear for people in our local folks. And then drone for the quad. So generally, I'd say pretty consistent with our national stuff, with the possible exception of the fixed wing jazz. Have you ever purchased? So never purchased is now was 60%. Now it's about 80%. Right. So, but that's pretty interesting, right? So random people we encountered, that's about a fifth of the people we randomly encountered had purchased a drone. That's way higher than I thought it would be. I thought it would be more like in the few percentages. So that's of note.
I think it's because when I would post the survey on my Facebook, the people that were commenting or sharing were like, "Oh, hey, honey, blah blah blah." Like her husband was a pilot, so he was interested in it, or like,
"That's right,
drones."
That's right. Yeah. So that's what we're saying. It's not. This is a random selection of people we bumped into. The online one is. It's not massively biased, but it's not random. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's why it's probably most appropriate for our online surveys to bin them as drone users, not drone users, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay. The UAV was, again, tracking what we saw before, that multi-rotor is by far the most popular thing. How much did it cost? Again, the cheapest category is what people are, people that have purchased one, that's what they're purchasing. Interestingly, compared to our online population, which clearly by default is biased to being online, because we know they have the ability to go online and they're familiar enough with it to click through an electronic survey, the people we're encountering randomly, they're much less likely to, so at least people in Santa Barbara, Ventura, LA counties are much less likely to have purchased a drone online relative to a brick and mortar store, which was surprising. I know it's surprising to me, maybe it's not surprising to you guys, but I thought that would track with the national data. Again, this is pretty similar in that we have the majority is part of the package. If we add the no, but I add one on, we go north of 50% of people. Primary use, again, recreation dominates. Have you ever operated it? We had, it was, yeah, so the more people, I don't remember the exact percentage last time from the online, but about 74% here. Split with people's views about California stuff. Climate change, 86%, right? The online one was 88%. 86 is a little bit high, but again, we have about a 5% error rate. So this is consistent with the data that we've been getting before. The 88%, the national average, it's within our 5%, but it's getting right up at the edge, whereas this one is actually more consistent with our polling. And then we can look at this. So generally, this follows the same trend, right? These guys, yes. We hit the spraying of the pesticides, much more evenly split, right? I mean, we're obviously, at least here in Ventura, we're a farm. We have a large component of our folks are farmers or in the ag industry, so that is maybe a little bit of an explaining factor. But the fact that we saw very similar results nationally shows that it's probably pretty robust. Much less support the local folks for taking photographs at weddings, right? Which is interesting. So that one does seem to be different than the national thing. The delivering small packages, similarly, more trepidation here about recreational use locally. Yeah, counting number of visitors, check it out. It's almost totally perfectly evenly split. People are very, very divided on whether that's appropriate or not appropriate at the local level. Yeah, assisting search and rescue, people still like that. Again, the film, so filming TV shows was pretty positive, still is. Breaking news, here's the breaking news. People much more positive about covering breaking news locally. Maybe that's because we're in Southern California. Maybe it's because people are more familiar or more comfortable with media and stuff like that. But that's quite different from the national response. Extreme sports. Everybody loves extreme sports. The emergency stuff is fine. Again, this guy is going to have about an error rate of about, it might be a little bit higher here than 5%. I haven't run this one. Helping to fight fires, yeah. Personal privacy, similar to the national stuff. Are you concerned that they pose a danger to their aircraft? A little bit less concerned than the national average, but similar. How often do you visit places? A surprising amount of people, only a few times a year. This is much higher than we typically find when we do this survey. So, so interesting. Not sure why that's so different from our historic data. I have to look more closely at that. Track with the national data, yes. Training course, and then about half the people or so think there should be some kind of federal permit. Similar to the national stuff. Have you ever seen a drone flying near you? Similar. Do we miss anything? Comments. What was it being used for? We can't really look at that right now. Where do you live? So similar to the national response, a little bit fewer people report being from urban areas, but that's probably because we're a bit more biased towards Ventura County with a little bit less. If we'd done it all in LA County, probably would have been higher. What year were you born? If you look at the distribution, it's fairly similar, although we have you guys talk to younger people on average, right? So the last time it was a pretty good distribution, where around the late 60s, early 70s was the mean of the population. This is skewing much younger. So you guys like to talk to people that are closer in age to you, it looks like, or at least they're more comfortable talking to you. You guys talk to people that are less wealthy on average, probably tracks because you guys talk to a lot of younger people, and younger people on average don't make much money yet because they're young. Educational attainment, and again, this tracks also in that you guys are much more likely to have people with only high school degree or just a little bit of college compared to our national sample of folks. Yeah. Overregulation, sort of similar. Electronically fence off, a little bit more support than our national population about geofencing and stuff. Do you know the privacy? Whoa, what the hell happened there? Where do we go? Where was I? Okay, so geofencing stuff. Should we be able to shoot down a plane similar to the national stuff? If you're on the beach or open space and you saw one, what would you feel? Fairly similar, although a little bit less concerned than the national data. When did you hear about this? A bit more recently. So our local population appears to be a little bit less familiar with drones, at least in terms of having hearing of them the first time, as compared to the national population. Oh, this is one we didn't click on last time, but I should have. But here you go. So again, I think this is pretty similar to the national one. Everybody's heard about the drones being used by the military. The crashing the White House, etc. Again, here, where is it? Here is our fake thing. This doesn't exist. So in this case, 8%. So we're pretty typically around 5%. Maybe it's a little bit higher error with our local population. Maybe it's more like 8%. Haven't run all the numbers yet, but But source of error there. Think about UAVs. Okay, so you guys saw the breakdown from the national poll. Here's your guys' data. Interested or intrigued, still, right, is still the most popular answer. Even though we're sampling much less drone-y type people, still the most common response, people are kind of like, what's that thing? Let me at least read about it. Let me at least hear about it. So that's of note. Airplane pilot's license, again, I told you the national average is about 3% or so. 1%. So closer to the national average, but maybe a little bit under sampling. So maybe pilots don't like to talk to you guys. Maybe you guys look scary to pilots or something.
I still haven't taken my survey on base, but I can do that this weekend and get more pilots.
Okay. I mean, we had to share it out, but if you want to go do a couple, sure. So okay, so there we go. So that's the overview of your guys' data. Again, we'll be killing the online one tonight. Is anybody still entering these surveys?
Yeah, like 4 or 5 more.
So you guys should enter them by today. Let's have Corey. If Corey wants to do surveys tomorrow, you can do some surveys tomorrow. But I want to be able to share this with you guys on Sunday. So take them and enter them by Sunday morning. Okay? So there we go. Cool. Questions? Is there anything else, jumping back to the things you guys want to look at, is there anything else that, have you seen that?
I just wanted to say that some of the differences might be because like it was an in-person survey and you were able to ask us questions about it, and I feel like maybe
Of course, totally, yeah, sure. So wait, on this you said blah blah blah. You mean blah blah blah?
Yeah.
Of course, and that's just sort of the nature of the beast. Yeah, right.
I'm just curious, what are you going to be doing with the surveys? Or the online, probably more.
Yeah, when you guys are done, when you guys are done with your playing around with them, we'll do like the summary data, not like all the breakdown necessarily, but just like how many people said this, how many people said that, just raw percentages and stuff. We'll be putting that up on our blog. So we have to QA/QC it, so probably like in May. We'll put up on the blog, so because that's what we told everybody that participated. You guys can have the data, so we'll make that available to the public, and then we'll probably do more high-level analysis, like this more comparison. What if we compared to boo 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 to boo boo boo, and like over the summer, kind of thing. So all of it we're going to put on the blog and make make available to everyone, but we kind of need to QA/QC it and spend a little more time. So there might be some cool geographic stuff we can do. The people in coastal states seem to think differently about that. The people that are in rural zip codes think differently than that kind of stuff. But that's beyond our scope for this class. So if you guys are interested in helping with that, love for you guys to help us out over the summer with that. But that's not expected by any stretch of the imagination. Cool. All right. Any other questions about stuff? Are we all good? Okay. All right. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? Why don't you guys go stretch and pop back here in about 10 minutes?